Welcome back to Ocala Talks on a Thursday. You know, people get involved with revisionist history, and they're going to do that with this pandemic. 5 years from now, people will tell you different things happened than actually happened. That's just how it's going to work. There's going to be spin doctors. There's going to be this is the most politicized pandemic that you know. I wasn't alive for the Spanish flu, but I cannot figure that it was as politicized as this pandemic has been politicized. And history is going to have to decide who was right and who was wrong. And the reason I bring this up is it shows you again the importance of history. You know, I was sitting with somebody the other day, and we were talking. They were talking about how they enjoyed science and math in high school, but they didn't enjoy history because it was boring. And that's a prevalent attitude, and I know that. But we need to somehow flip that script, because right now, in the history of our country, where we came from and the freedoms that this country was founded on and the ideals of this country are being revised by the people who want to see it change. That's just my humble opinion. And that is categorically wrong, in my opinion. The fact that people want to erase history instead of embrace history is an issue. You got to know where you came from, folks. If you don't know where you come from, if you don't know the mistakes you've already made, if you can't look back on the wisdom of the past and say, we can't do that. Like we know, I'll give you a prime example. We know when you look back in history, in the 50s and 60s, as the Kelly girls were breaking into the job scene, the secretaries and the executive assistants and all, we know that men were chauvinistic pigs who had no regard for women or respect for the women that they worked for the most part. You see shows like Mad Men and all that tell you how things were in the 60s, where if women were in the workplace, they were put into positions of uncomfortable situations all the time. And it was just something you had to deal with. If your boss came by and gave you a little smack on the butt, you had to deal with it. If your boss came by or one of the guys in the office came by and complimented you on how your bosoms looked in your sweater in the 1950s, you had to laugh it off. Now, we know that is just ridiculous. No woman should be subjected to that. We understand that. But we can look back and see exactly how bad it was by looking back at history. Say, we don't ever want to do that again. That was objectifying and, being disrespectful to women. We don't want to do that. We've learned from our past history that that's unacceptable. Now, is it still a perfect society now? No. But we've come a long way from smacking girls on their rear end while they were in their little business skirts in their boss's office. We've come a long way from Mrs. Wiggins and Mr. Tutball. If you don't get that reference, that's a you problem, not a me problem. But we know that those things are wrong because we can look back in recent history and see just how wrong they were. We know the casting couch approach to Hollywood movies is terrible, was wrong. Harvey Weinstein is a prime example. We can look back in history and see. What are you going to do, erase Harvey Weinstein from history? You can't do that. We need to know the monsters that were in our past so we can see them in our future. When you see that monster in the future, you recognize them more readily. That's what I think people are missing here when they want to do a revision of history or they want to erase history altogether, is you're forgetting it's a timeline that helps us not repeat it. And I know people say, "Oh, I don't buy into that. If you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it." Go back and look. I could show you falls of civilization that mirror each other year after year after year for thousands of years. And by the way, if you go back and look at the fall of the Roman Empire, it's eerily similar to the United States and world, and how the United States was the leading power and is the leading power in the world. At one time, the Roman was the most unmolested citizen in the world until they weren't. At one time, an American was the most unmolested person on the face of the earth. Now we're not. You can't forget or erase history. You just can't. Or you don't learn from it. We know that Jim Crow laws are bad. We know that turning fire hoses on African Americans that are peacefully protesting and letting loose German Shepherd dogs on them to attack them is wrong. We have history to go back and look and say that's not right. We can tell. It's not right. But if you take that away, how's anybody 50 years from now going to know? People say, I had this discussion with somebody over the weekend that they were tired of the weekend before the 9/11 memorials. They were tired of that because it was 20 years ago. We need to let it go and move on. No, we don't. If you forget what happened 20 years ago on September 11th, if 50, 60 years from now, nobody remembers what happened on September 11th, that's a bad thing. Just think about the apathy. Think about the people that don't think December 7th is a very important day anymore. I bet if you ask the under 30 crowd, give them 3 dates. Give them December 7th, not even use September. Give them December 7th, August 14th, and May 9th. Which one of those days is the most significant in history? I bet they'd be hard-pressed to come up with December 7th, 1941. A day that will live in infamy, according to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, president at the time. I bet the 30-something and unders don't think that because they've stopped worrying about history. We got to get back to worrying about history, folks. It's just as important as math and science. Just as important as math and science. You got to get back to history. It's just as important as math and science. We'll take a break, come back. I hear some rumblings around here. I think he may be in the building. Oh, my God, he's in the building. We'll be back after this timeout. 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, WOCA, The Source.
Broadcasting from the Ocala International Airport, this is WOCA AM, W242CA FM, Ocala, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
USA Radio News with Lance Pry.
Senators held a closed-door briefing Wednesday with 3 DOD officials about the Afghanistan debacle. Republican Senator Joni Ernst with the News, DOD
USA Radio News with Lance Pry.
Senators held a closed-door briefing Wednesday with 3 DoD officials about the Afghanistan debacle. Republican Senator Joni Ernst with the Senate Armed Services Committee tells Fox News DoD officials